What's going on, y'all? It is your girl, Bria Simmons, and you're listening to Certified BS. So, we are doing an episode on emotions today. I know in the past episodes, you have learned about kind of our belief systems, the behavior science, all of the BSs that I've talked about in mental health. Well, this one is about emotions. It's not a BS, but a lot of people will talk about emotions as being BS. And so we're going to break it down. We are, again, brainstorming a better self here. We're not becoming our best selves. We're just becoming better selves. And so if you can understand more about your emotional self, it is going to give you so much more understanding about who you are and what's taking place and how to deal with these things called emotions. And what I will say, just transparently, is I will likely be saying emotions and feelings interchangeably throughout this episode. So just to give you a heads up, I'm going to be using those both interchangeably. There's debate in the psychology community if these are actually different, if they're the same, if emotions are more broad and feelings are more nuanced, but I'm using them interchangeably. But before we jump into any of that, we're actually going to do something different today. We're going to start with some breath work. So the one BS that is not BS at all, well, I guess breath work is not BS, doesn't have those initials, but breathing and breath work is not BS. But people don't realize that this is truly the simplest and most basic, easy, possible tactic that we're actually doing every single day. Our body is naturally breathing. We thank our bodies for being able to do that. But to intentionally engage in breath work is one of the simplest tools to actually scientifically improve your mental health and components of mental health. So it can reduce anxiety and stress. It can help to engage in mindfulness. It can actually help you regulate your emotions. And if you don't believe me that this is the least BS practice in the whole history of mental health, it's actually something that was practiced and first really utilized by Navy SEALs when they were going into battle or one of their missions in order to be able to stay calm. So like it is tried and true. It is proven. It is used at the highest ranks and the highest levels in in the world in order to help stay calm and practiced over time. It really is the back pocket tool for so many spaces in mental health. So today we're going to do box breathing. We might be starting with this, for several episodes. I don't know. Still brainstorming it, right? We're brainstorming here. So we're going to do box breathing today. Really simple. We're making a box with our breath, and it's just a way to get centered, get regulated, get here and ready for this episode, really be practical and something you can take away right away. So box breathing is going to be breathing in through your nose for 4 seconds, holding that breath for 4 seconds, breathing out through your mouth for 4 seconds, and then pausing for 4 seconds, okay? Couple things, okay? If you are driving, do not close your eyes. Please keep your eyes on the road, and you actually can do that with breath work, so we're really happy you can do this no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter how you're listening, if you're running, if you're driving, if you're in the shower, if you're working out, if you're on a break, whatever it is, you can do this. If you do have the ability to close your eyes, then do that. That can help to really be mindful in the practice, but you do not need to close your eyes in order for this practice to work. Okay. Really quickly though, I want you to count with me if you're able to, because that's part of the mindfulness here. That's also part of the really important experience of doing the breath work is being able to count along, especially with box breathing, because it's taking your focus away from your thought process or the thing that might be distracting you and really putting it into the mindful place of the breath, or what we can call it the anchor. Okay. So we're all going to do it together. We're going to talk more about this. I'll likely have a whole episode on breathing and breath work, but that's not today. We're just practicing. It's a takeaway tool. So with me, again, we're going to breathe in through our nose for 4, 2, 3, 4. Pause for 4, 2, 3, 4. Out for 4, through 2, 3, 4, and hold for 4, 2, 3, 4. Okay, one more time. In through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Out your mouth. 2, 3, 4. And pause. 2, 3, 4. Okay. Obviously, I was counting and trying to bring you through that. That was quick. We're just getting centered. We'll continue to practice that, but welcome in. So it's the episode about emotions today. We are talking about what emotions are, what they're doing to us, why they're there, why we need them, why we don't like them. We're going to talk about specific emotions if we can get to it. And there are some I know a lot of people want to know about. But emotions are not BS either, though we don't love them. In fact, they can really interfere with a lot of things that are going on for us. And, they can kind of get in the way. Like they're not always our best friend. But they do serve a purpose in our lives. They do help us to understand what's going on for us. And I actually say they're like the indicator lights on your dashboard of the car. Like they are telling you that something is going on. Okay, something's going on in your body, in your mind, in your experience, in your perception, in your world, in your relationships. Something is going on. Now, one of our biggest problems that we have with emotions is that there are ones that we like to feel, and then there are ones that we don't like to feel. What is problematic with that is our natural experience of judging everything in our lives and in our worlds, including emotions. We want to judge emotions as good and bad. And let me tell you, I'm sure right now, or as close to sure as I can get, that you have likely at one point or another in your life judged happiness, joy, excitement, elation, surprise, love, all of these. Well, love, I'm going to actually remove that one because I don't know about that one. But happiness, joy, excitement, all of those, I can almost guarantee that at one point or another, you have termed those as good emotions. I'm just letting you all marinate on that, right? Have you thought that happiness, joy, excitement, that those are good emotions? I am also going to take a guess right now. I'm just going to throw it out there that at one point in time, you have also termed sadness, anger, frustration, disgust, hatred, annoyance, that you have termed all of those as bad emotions. I'm just checking here. Has that happened for you? Have you thought that happiness is good and anger is bad? That laughter is good, which is like a byproduct of happiness or joy, and that crying is bad, which is like a byproduct of anger or sadness. Okay, well, you're wrong. And I hope it's okay for me to just let you know right now you're wrong. Okay, just let that marinate. Our emotions are not meant to be judged. And this is actually one of our biggest problems with them, is that we have no idea how to orient to them. We're so unequipped and never really properly taught or educated on what to do with our emotions. So we just use our intuitive sense or our natural experience. Well, I like the way this one feels, so that must be good, right? We're so good at interpreting, or we think we're so good at interpreting. So that's like what our brain does. It interprets. So, if this one feels good, it must be a good emotion. And if this one feels bad, then it must be a bad emotion. And that is unfortunately just a trap that our brain has gotten us into, and we've never been taught how to get out of it. And because of that, whenever we feel the emotions that we don't like to feel, the anger, the sadness, the frustration, then we are immediately going to the space of, how do I get out of this? This is not good. I should not be here. This is bad. How do I get out of it? I'm going to zoom out for a second, and I'm going to just describe an emotional spectrum, okay? We can describe a lot of life on different spectrums, and our emotional spectrum is really important to understand, okay? So imagine in the middle of the spectrum, if I can bring you back to math class for a second, like we just have like a horizontal line, the x-axis, right? Okay, and in the middle, it would typically be 0. And then if you are looking over to the right side of that line, it'd be the positive numbers, and then if you're looking to the left of that line, it'd be the negative numbers. Okay, so we're going to use that, but we're going to use it for emotion. So it's interesting because you are going to hear me use the words positive and negative, but they don't mean the positive and negative that you believe they mean, and I will clarify. But imagine that line, and imagine that 0 right there is baseline. This is like our baseline human experience. This is the state that we end up in typically daily or hopefully daily, sometimes not. And truthfully, there's actually many times not. But this is the state that is natural for us where there's not a major emotional experience taking place. Okay. Baseline at that 0. Now, if we look over on to the positive side of the x-axis, the plus numbers, +1, +2, +3, that's where all of those feelings that you really enjoy feeling would be placed, okay? Maybe there is like an actual order of like what would be right after baseline, and then after that, and let's say like +10 is as far out as you can go, like the most like elated or exuberant feeling that ever did exist. It's like way over there. Maybe there is like a gradient for that. I don't have that for us, and I don't think we actually need that. We just need to know these are the emotions that feel good for us. These are the ones that we want to feel, okay? And when we think about them as being on the positive side of this x-axis or of this spectrum, we want to be reminded that it's adding something in. We like to feel these emotional experiences because we're often receiving something that feels good to receive, okay? Our cup is being filled, so to speak. That's what's taking place on this side of that spectrum, okay? So when we feel happy, it's likely because we are receiving something. Maybe not it's physically receiving something, but I know when I receive a compliment, I feel good about that. I feel happy. That's something that I like to feel, right? If I am feeling joy, maybe I received a hug or a great feedback on a presentation or accomplished on a task that I completed, right? Like we like to feel these things often because we want to think that like something is being added in, our cup is being filled, okay? We also call those in the psychology community the positive valence emotions. Now, I might just say the emotions we like to feel. It just is more relatable as humans. Okay, back to baseline. Okay, we're going to look to the left side of that spectrum of that x-axis, okay? This is where you would typically see the numbers -1, -2, -3, and so on. Again, we're just using like -10 as like the furthest out. Maybe this is like the absolute most anger or rage or hatred or sadness, right? Like there's a lot of like negative valence emotions that we might be able to feel all the way over there. But again, we're not putting them in that gradient. We're just saying these are the emotions that we don't like to feel, okay? These are the ones that are spreading all the way out on that negative side. And when we think negative, we want to think of something's getting taken away or something is missing. And that's usually, again, what's taking place for us. If we think about a kid on the playground, if we want to think about the most basic term, and what I will say is I will use children often because children are such prime examples of like what is actually happening with our emotional experiences. And they're so good at really being able to demonstrate an emotional experience for us, in real time. But if you're thinking about a kid on the playground and someone takes his toy, something is taken away, okay, then he is or they are having a negative emotional experience. They might be feeling sad or angry or frustrated or annoyed. Something takes place there, okay? So we want to think of, at that point in time, that your cup is getting emptied, right? Positive valence emotion, cup is getting filled. Negative valence emotions, cup is getting emptied, okay? So here's the thing that people don't like to hear about this negative valence emotional side is that we're still supposed to feel those feelings. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit more about why and how, but all of our emotions are telling us something. This is going back to them being the indicator lights on the car. Okay. Maybe we have our gas tank is full. That's great. Maybe we need gas. Our gas tank is empty. Okay. So the problem with the way that we as humans have been trying to move through our emotional experiences is that when we have one on this positive side, we want to hold on to it as long as we can. And if we lose it or if it starts to fade away, we can feel like maybe we're doing something wrong. Not always, right? Not always, but it can also leave us maybe a bit of an empty feeling, right? Like we just had this grateful feeling and now I'm coming back to baseline. But that's what's supposed to happen. And it's the same with the negative valence emotions, but it's a little bit opposite because when we feel a negative valence emotion, like anger or sadness, we are feeling it and we're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to feel this. I don't want to feel this. How do I get away from it? And eventually we come back to baseline and we're like, oh yeah, okay, I'm doing something right. So the actual one of again, our human problems, our human traps is that when we naturally have a positive valence emotion and then we come back to baseline, we feel like we're doing something wrong or we're not doing something right because we believe we're supposed to stay in this positive state. And when we have a negative valence emotion, we feel like we're not supposed to stay in this negative state. So when we start to come back to baseline, we're like, oh yes, I'm doing something right. I'm getting out of this emotion. All of these, again, these are putting all of these judgments onto our emotional experience. And guess what? You're just supposed to feel it for the amount of time that it's happening. And then eventually you come back to baseline. Okay. Now this is bringing me to one of the most important points and one of the biggest challenges for humans. And this is going to be more so on the negative valence emotion side, or the feelings that we don't like to feel, that we're supposed to feel, but we don't like to feel. There's a major difference between pain and suffering, okay? Pain is feeling plus fact. Pain is, I feel angry because that kid took my toy. Feeling, anger, fact, the kid took my toy. Suffering, though, is the really human experience that starts to take place closer to adolescence and adulthood. Where things get more complicated and complex. And guess what? You can have a lot of feelings at once. You can have more emotions than one at once. And you can have a lot of things in life going on at once. So this is why I use kids, because we can understand the concept with kids. But I want to just put it right out there that I know life is not this cut and dry, that life is not this simple, and that emotions do not happen this simply. In fact, we can have 10 plus different actual emotional experiences going on at once. And that gets really confusing and really hard to navigate. But let's just stick with the kids for a second. Pain is feeling plus fact. So what's suffering? Well, suffering is all of the thoughts, beliefs, judgments, and interpretations that we add on to that fact. So imagine that our kid on the playground just got his toy taken from him, okay? Feeling pain, anger is the pain point. That kid took my toy. Suffering is, and I'm never going to get the toy back, and I'm never going to get to go to the next grade, and my teacher's going to be mad at me because now I'm upset, and I'm never going to be able to get back to the place that I was, and I'll never get to play that game again, and I can't believe this is happening to me, and this is the worst thing ever, and feeling this is terrible, and I can't believe he took my toy, and why did he do that? Is it because I did something wrong? And I think you get the point. So that doesn't always happen with kids, which is why, again, very simply, kids can really demonstrate an emotional experience. What typically happens with kids is that they go through their pain point, which is, I feel angry because that kid took my toy. And then eventually they move through it. And that's the way that an emotional experience should take place. We are supposed to naturally come back to baseline. And in fact, if we are appropriately moving through our emotions, if we're not trying to push them away, if we're just being with them, and that's a whole nother conversation because everyone's like, well, how do I just be with them? Well, just being with them is not pushing them away, but how that works for you can be very different. For some people, that's taking a walk. For some people, that's crying it out. For some people, that's listening to music. For some people, that's talking to friends. There are a lot of different ways to be with it. So you have to figure out what works for you, and that's a different conversation. But emotions in their most pure natural state flow through us, and they never last. Okay, but suffering, unfortunately, suffering can last forever. And we create the suffering. Okay, so this, as I'm starting to talk about it right now, I'm also imagining that this might be a whole episode in itself because I can guess that there might be some questions on this. I know that there typically are when I explain this to people in person. So I want you to be able to ask your questions. I know that there are plenty of them, and this is gonna wrap up this episode for now. I'm going to just leave you with the thought process of pain and suffering and what emotions are, how we utilize them, how they work for us, why we have them, why we need them. This is going to be my call to action for you. And I would hope for everyone here to be able to reach out and let me know what your questions are. Do you want to know more about pain and suffering? Do you want to know more about how to feel through emotions, feel it to heal it? Do you want to know more about that emotional spectrum? Really reach out, and I'm going to give you all the places. You can reach out at the Bria Simmons at any of my social medias. You can also reach out at connect@briasimmons.com. That's going to be the email and probably the best place to reach out if you do have questions, as well as YouTube. So if you are listening to this on any of your major podcast platforms, that's great. Thank you for your support. You can also watch on YouTube, and that's where you can actually leave comments on any of these places. So I hope you all do. I'm looking forward to your questions, and we're going to pause it here. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe on all of the channels. I really appreciate your support. And until next time, let this be the moment. We'll talk soon. I'm Bria Simmons, and this is Certified BS. Thanks for listening.